kunjabiyare. Gopijannavara girivaradare. Gopijannavara girivaradare. Jasodananana Brajajannaranjana Jasodananana Brajajannaranjana Jamunatira Vanajare Jamunatira Vanajare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Janavava Girivaradare Gopi Janavava Girivaradare Jasodananana Brajajannaranjana Jasodananana Brajajannaranjana Jamunatira Vanajare Jamunatira Vanajare Jaya Ram Madhava Kunja Bihare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayana Naskrityam Naram Jaivam Narottamam Devam Sarasvitam Vyasam Tato Jayarirat Shinmata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hritantasto Hi Abdrani Vedanoti Suhrit Satam Nasta Praya Bhavdeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevayam Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 63rd chapter, text 35 through 36. Nirbhiram nabo grimukum abureto Nabirnavo agnir mukum abureto Dayu sirsam ashasrutir agnir uvi Dayu sirsam ashasrutir agnir urvi Chandromano yasya drik aka atma Chandromano yasya drik aka atma Aham samudro jataram bhujendraya Aham samudro jataram bhujendraya Ramani yasya sadavyo ambuvahu Ramani. This is the second one. Do we do that one? Just that one? Okay. Nabir nabo agnir mukham abureto Dayosir samasya shutir agnir urvi Chandromano yasya drik aka atma Aham sumadro tataram bhujendraya. Please repeat. Nabir naboragnir mukham abunreto Dayosir samasya shutir agnir urvi Chandromano yasya drik aka atma Aham samudro tataram bhujendraya. Nabir nabagni mukham aburito Jasir samasya sritir agnir uvi Chandromano yasya drikaka atma Aham samadro tataram bhujendraya. Nabir nabo agni mukham abunreto Jasir samasya sritir agnir uvi Chandromano yasya drikaka atma Aham samdrujatno tarambujendraya. Matit. Nabir naboranir mukham aburito. Dasir samasya frutirak nirguri. Chandro manoyasya trikarkaratma. Aham samudro tatarambujendriya. Anyone else? Nabir nabo agnir mukham abundrito. Dasir samasya tritiraknir uvi. Chandro manoyasya drikarkaratma. Aham samdro dattaram bundandriya. So I'll read 36. Romani yasya saudayo ambu vadha kesavaricho dishyana visagara prajapati hridayam yasya dharmaha sava bhavan puruso loka karpa. Synonyms: Nabi, the navel; Nabha, the sky; Agni, fire; Mukham, the face; Ambu, water; Retaha, the semen; Du, heaven; Shirsham, the head; Ashaha, the directions; Shrutihi, the senses of hearing; Agrihi, the foot; Urvi, the earth; Chandra, the moon; Manaha, the mind; Yasya, whose; Drik, sight; Arkaha, the sun; Atma, self-awareness; Aham, I, Shiva; Samudraha, the ocean; Datharam, the abdomen; Bhuja, the arm; Indraya, Indra; Romani, the hairs on the body; Yasya, whose; Osadayaha, herbal plants; Ambuvaha, water-bearing clouds; Keshaha, the hairs on the head; Virichaha, Lord Brahma; Dishana, discriminating intelligence; Visagaraha, the genitals; Prajapatihi, the progenitors of mankind; Hridayam, the heart; Yasya, whose; Dharma, religion; Saha, he; by, indeed; Bhavan, your good self; Purusha, the primeval creator. Loka, the worlds. Kalpaha, produced from him. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. The sky is your navel, fire your face, water your semen, and heaven your hand, your head. The cardinal directions are your sense of hearing, herbal plants, the hairs on your body, and water-bearing clouds on the hairs of your head. The earth is your foot, the moon your mind, and the sun your vision. While I am your ego, the ocean is your abdomen. Indra, your arm, Lord Brahma, your intelligence. The progenitors of mankind, your genitals, and religion, your heart. You are indeed the original Purusa, creator of the worlds. Om Agyanam Dhanamanyasya Gyanajana Shalakya Chakshuruminitin Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Datanya Manobhistam Snapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadam Dadati Swabhataktikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Duta Patakabalam Shri Guram Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagratatam Sahagana Raganabhavitam Tam Samjigam Savavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vatsakavitamscha He Krishna Karun Sindho Dinabandhu Gopite Gopisha Gopisha Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishbharanu Sutta Devi Parinami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Karu Prishta Kripa Sindhu Bhebata Patitinam Pada Vibhyo Vaishnavi Namo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in the purport, Srila Sridhar Swami explains that just as the tiny bugs living inside a fruit cannot comprehend the fruit, so the tiny living beings cannot understand the supreme absolute truth in whom we exist. It is difficult to understand the cosmic manifestation of the Lord. What do we speak of the transcendental form of Sri Krishna? Therefore, we should surrender in Krishna consciousness, and the Lord himself will help us understand. So this description that we have Lord Shiva speaking, and this is after we have this episode with the Shiva Dwara, which is Shiva's weapon, actually his devotee, and how this weapon is actually bowing to Krishna because Krishna with his weapon, he has this immense heat that's coming from his dwara. And the Shiva dwara is experiencing both heat and cold. And so he's amazed that I thought I was the most powerful weapon. And so now he's realizing his power has been superseded. Because, of course, he's thinking that Shiva is the all in all. This is what people do. This is what we do with our parents. If we admire our parents, I'll have to preface by, if we admire our parents, we think, well, my dad, he can do anything. My mom, she can do anything. And then we come across someone else's parent, and we can see that their glory may exceed your own parents. So in this particular instance, the Shiva Dwara has experienced this magnanimity exceeding that of Lord Shiva. So this is amazing. And then Shiva, because he's already aware of this, because he is one of the number one devotees of the Supreme Lord, he's acknowledging and he's reflecting on all of the glories of the Lord. And you see that listing as Agni, water, hair standing, on the arms and all this other kind of stuff. So what we see is that Krishna in the 10th canto, you see Krishna is representing the best of the best, right? And out of the Rudras, who's Krishna representing? Lord Shiva, right? So Lord Shiva knows his stature, but he also appreciates the Supreme Lord. I'm the best, but he's the best of the best. It says, Rujaram sakaras chasmi vitiso yaksha rakshayam Vaushunam pavakahas chasmi meru sikharinam aham. So we have this Rudra. And this one line, the third pada of this shloka of 1023, we have Vasunam pavakas chasmi. And then that line, it basically the Vasus, right? Of the Vasus. Krishna is representing this fire, and we see that in the sun. We see Krishna as the moon. We see Krishna as the sun. In the translation, all of the Rudras, I am Lord Shiva. Of the Yakshas and the Rakshakshas, I am the Lord of Wealth, Kuvera, right? And of the Vasus, I am fire, Agni. So we see also this, you can associate this fire with Guru, right? Tattva Darshina. We mentioned this a couple of days ago. So the Guru is also represented this way. And Krishna goes on to mention that as well. And he says, of mountains, I am Meru. So you have the Himalayas, and then you have the great mountains or hills, and you have this Meru. So we can understand that in this particular chapter, that there's this litany, and you find this sometimes it happens when one is defeated, then their glories are expounded, right? It actually makes the pastime even more sweeter when something in that regard is elucidated so nicely. So, but if we go to the 10th chapter, we start at text 21, I believe. So he says, of the Adityas, I am Vishnu. Of lights, I am the radiant sun. So these things are coming into place. So now you have Shiva is mentioning this, but in this chapter, Arjuna is requesting, I want to know your splendor. I want to know all of your greatness. And so Krishna is like, okay, I should tell you all my greatness. He says, I'm the beginning, the middle, and the end. Right? So you have the creator, maintainer, and the destroyer. So you have Vishnu, which he mentions as the Adityas, and then you have Lord Brahma, and then you have the Rudras again. Text 24, he says, of priests, Priyodasham Chamukyamam Vidipartam Parihasparitim. So he says of priest, right? I am Brihaspati. He goes on to tell Arjuna that of generals, I'm Kartikeya. Now, we also saw Kartikeya in this battle. He took an L. He took a loss, right? So he's to compare something, to see its greatness, you also need something great, right? So in a modern sense, and it's a little dated, you say that Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player, right? But in my era, and I'm dating myself, I'm thinking it's Wilt Chamberlain, right? He could do so many more things. So you see, we compare people according to their greatness. Or this person, or this Mataji, this Prabhuji, they're the best cooks in Ishkan. You know, we all have our favorites. And then someone else comes along, and then they, in a sense, they may exceed that. But that's due to one's bias. But there's no bias here because now you've seen these great generals and warriors on the battlefield, Kartikeya, and he takes a defeat. You see Lord Shiva, he's even greater. He's the father of Kartikeya, right? He takes a defeat, right? Out of service. So you have those great personalities, and then you have the greatest of personalities. So of great sages, no, of all trees, because we mentioned trees in here too. Of all trees, I am the banyan tree. Why the banyan tree? Right? Why the banyan tree? Well, the banyan tree is going everywhere. Right? Its greatness is reflected in how it. You don't know where it begins, and you don't know where it ends. This is the characteristic of the banyan tree. And of all the sages among the demigods, I am Narada. Narada is kind of like he goes everywhere, like the banyan tree, right? He's everywhere. And he says, of the Gandharvas, I am Chittaratra. And among perfect beings, I am the sage Kapila. Not the bogus one, but the bona fide one, right? We also see of horses, I am to be known as Uchashwara, produced from the churning of the ocean of nectar. Of lordly elephants, I am Aravata. And among men, I am the monarch and the king. So we learn this, that the kings at one time were supposed to represent God. They're supposed to have that stature. But due to Kali Yuga, they became very corrupt. And so the balance of everything. He even says of using the example of great personalities, great kings. He says, I am also Ram, Lord Ram. Okay? Very interesting. So these are all expanded energies of the Supreme Lord. Of weapons, I am the thunderbolt. Who's the thunderbolt coming from? Right? This is Indra, right? Of weapons, I'm the thunderbolt. Among cows, I am Surabhi. Yes. Of causes for procreation, I am Kandarpa, the god of love. And of serpents, I am Vasuki. So he's naming these things. He says, of many hooded Nagas, I am Ananta. You probably know this by heart. And among the aquatics, I am the demigod Varuna. Of departed ancestors, I am Aryama. And among the dispensers of law, I am Yamaraj. Okay? So he's showing the complete universal administration is coming from him. So how is it possible that Banasura can defeat him? It's not possible. You can even say of the many arms of Banasura, I'm the origin of that. Everything that is manifested, I am the center of all those things. Among the Daityas, demons, I am the devoted Prahlad. So Prahlad is the grandson. Banasura is the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. So, and Krishna is the best in that representation. So here's an interesting thing because we think about this. Banasura is a demon, and Prahlad Maharaj is a demon. The distinction is, demon is devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I think there's a term called Jara Bharat, right? Meaning that one can remember his past life situation. So we had Maharaj Bharat, who could remember that he was a great king, he was very attached to a deer, and then he falls down. So in this particular case, Prahlad, he could remember his predicament prior to this particular situation. And he's in the womb, and he's not really wanting to come out. But what jolts him is the philosophy that he's learning from Narada Muni. And I believe you had a similar situation with Sutta Goswami. He's also not wanting to come out, right? But he, because of the nectar of dissertation of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's kind of compelled to come out. Other than that, he does not want to associate with the material energy. Of purifiers, I am the wind. Now there's the wind is a purifier. The sun is a purifier. Water is a purifier, right? And then we also have air. So earth, wind, fire. I know, I squeezed that in there. So we have all these things as purifier. Krishna is the core element to all these things. So it's very important. Let's on a mundane level. You give Sunday feasts, and someone talks about your history, your bio, right? I wonder if it's really bio or bile-o. So they talk about your, the accomplishments. They don't compare. They don't compare. They don't compare anything. But for Krishna, even Ananta doesn't have enough tongues to recite all the glories of the Supreme Lord. So Lord Shiva is taking a small bit out of this section before things progress, very negatively for his disciple, Shiva's disciple, Banasura. He's trying to encourage him. So first, what you do, hey, have you heard that guy play? Have you heard him? Did you watch him? And the guy's, yeah, no big deal. I got this. I can handle it. No, I don't think you've seen this guy play before. Let me tell you a little bit about his glory before you go up against him. So even you're in the middle of some competition, hey, did you really appreciate what he did, that move he did? It wasn't that big deal. I slipped on. I didn't eat well this morning. I didn't. So you're making this excuses because you're in some space of anger and embarrassment. That's what happens. You ever watch a person when they're humiliated? They get even more surcharged. They want to fight more. They go like it. I just need another shot at it. Jarasandha is like that, right? I just need another shot. How many times did I lose? 18 times. I'm losing to Krishna, and in the end, I want to call him a coward. You ran away. I'm all proud. And then you also have Banasura. Same circumstance, right? His mother had to, be the lone nudist in a colony by herself. She had to expose herself just to save her son. And then now his spiritual master, Banasura's spiritual master, is having to take a little bit of time. In this little commercial break, let me tell you about Krishna's glories. First, it was Shiva's servant, Sivajara. He's telling about his glories, and now Shiva is telling the glories. And you would think, after I heard all that and saw all that and was defeated, you'd think I'd stop. But that wasn't enough. He needed more. He needed to be thoroughly convinced. Some people like, well, I need to be convinced. Well, how much more do you need? So obviously he's not paying attention to what's going on in surroundings. And this is what happens to ahankara vimudatma. We become bewildered. And there's a lot of bewilderment because Banasura is looking at his lineage. He's looking at his strength, his prowess. He's thinking, oh, only my master would be a suitable challenge for me. And Shiva's thinking, I have the perfect person for you. Um, and luckily, he's not finished yet. He still has lessons to learn. So this is the point of defeat. It's education. It's a lesson. And also learning the glories so that you can appreciate the glories of the Supreme Lord. So there are other things to reflect on here, is that understanding what proper duty is, and that proper duty is coming out of religion. What are your religious duties? So religion here is translated as dharma. So we understand it from an English standpoint. The best way that they can translate it is occupational duty. So we look at the word religion. Re means again. And legion means to group. So we're trying to regroup. What is the regrouping about? Well, we have a constitutional position. And we can see that Banasura is learning what his constitution is. But it takes a whole lot of arms to do it. He has to lose a lot of things in order to understand his proper constitution. And our constitution is that we're not the supreme. We're the servant of the supreme. There's supremacy in servitude, but we're not the supreme. And even Lord Chaitanya takes the position as the supreme servant. He takes that position, but we're not the supreme. And that, it's interesting that the translation or the addition of the supreme personality of Godhead. The reason why we just don't say God, because that can be very convoluted. Because there are so many gods. Or as Prabhupada talks about the word Bhagavan, right? We see that Lord Brahma qualifies as Bhagwan. Lord Shiva qualifies as Bhagwan. But there's the supreme personality. In other words, one above all others. There is no mystery. And Bhrigu also had this experience, and he's trying to figure out who's the supreme, who's the most tolerant. So he's around the other sages. They decided, well, you go to Vaikuntha, or go see Lord Brahma first. And he made an offense in front of Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma wanted to just dispatch him. So he had to control his anger. He went on and did that also to Lord Shiva, his brother. He wanted to kill him. But Parvati saved him. And then he goes to Vaikuntha. And he sees Lakshmi actually massaging the Lord and his chest. And the Lord says, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't properly, greet you. He says, your foot. Did I harm your foot? He's thinking, So this sage learned who's the supreme person, right? That's not the kind of trial and error we need. Banasura, he's on his own mission. He's thinking, I am the supreme. I can't be defeated. And then he gets a rude awakening. And Krishna's still willing to give him mercy. And this is the one aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead we can all learn. And that is, when you're supreme, you do not take offense to anyone. You can immediately turn around and be merciful because nothing challenges you. So that's the goal of the devotee when we're dealing with the material energy, that we become supremely situated in our devotional service, so much so that we're not disturbed by challenges, so we can tolerate others. We can tolerate the challenges of the mind. Um, so these are some of the things that we can learn, lessons that we can learn from this particular pastime, how to properly be a devotee. Because in reality, we're Banasura as well. We have some of the same, we think we have a lot, and really what we have is given. It's not that it's because I manifested. Demons. I shall have so much wealth. I shall have this. I shall have this. I shall give in charities. I. Right? Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. That's our identification. But we're thinking elsewise that we are the source of all of our good fortune, and we're not. So this I thought was very self-explanatory. I thought I would bring some other things in that might elucidate the glory of the Supreme Lord. Of course, I can't do that. We'd be reading and pillows on the floor, heads knocking the wood, that sort of thing. We would go on and on and on, talking about the glories, and we'd have our attention span, prashadam's next, perk you up, that sort of thing. So are there any questions, comments, corrections, realizations that you might want to add about the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this particular pastime and shloka? Yes, sir.
Thank you for the class, Prabhuji. In the context of your class, my thought, and it's kind of like a question, but a kind of a thought also, where they say the service to the Vaishnava is higher than service to the Supreme Lord. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that. Like, why is it so glorious to serve a devotee?
Yes. So Lord Krishna, he has this affinity for Brahmins. He considers the Brahmins, as we see in the universal form, they're the heads. And he's very dear to them. He says, he particularly says that the devotees are in me and I am in them. So there's a love relationship that's happening. Now, this is Brahman Vaishnava, right? So there's a loving relationship. So if you can attempt to put yourself in the consciousness of Krishna, what does Krishna like? What is Krishna adhered to? And the thing he loves Brahmins. He loves the Vaishnavas, right? I think I used this example of Sudama the other day. Sudama, he didn't have very much, but he loved Sudama because he understood the love that reciprocated. So when we are truly in a loving relationships, that love becomes primary. And then when that becomes the primary object of our heart, we put it on the altar. So Krishna puts the Brahmins on the altar, so to speak, of his heart. And because he understands the charity of the Brahmin. So this is what he aspires. Even though it's already in him, he appreciates when he sees it in others. So there's one devotee, when he would come to the prison and preach to some of the inmates, one of the things he would say, he says, Krishna has everything. He has these 6 opulents. But he said there's one thing that Krishna doesn't have. He said, well, what is that? Your love. So we're in this material setting, we withhold our love from the Supreme Lord. We reserve it for other things, his energies, which cannot reciprocate. So Krishna adores one who adores him. And we see it with Radharani. So when you're loving Vaishnavas very nicely, he sees as though I want to take the dust of that person's lotus feet. Because the devotee is also considered more merciful than the Lord. And we saw this with Arjuna. He wanted to destroy Krishna wanted to kill Dhanavamaya, but because Arjuna gave him protection, Krishna abided by his, his wish. And likewise, it was believed that Banasura was going to be taken out by Krishna, but simply because Shiva's devotee, and also he made a promise to Prahlad. He kept his promise. So Prahlad, as you can see in the pastime, was very, very dear to Lord Nrsimha. Very dear. So there's a special love relationships that's developed for anyone who wants to be a devotee of the Supreme Lord. So that's why that the Vaishnava devotee Brahman is exalted, because that's an exalted position that one is going through a lot of cultivation to be charitable to others, because Brahman means to be charitable. They're the reasons why charity is properly dispensed. And we have a Kadasi tomorrow. And one of the things that the Brahmins do, they give umbrellas, they make a pot of water, and they're also the ones who should be the recipients of charity, not just anyone. Brahmins are the recipients because they know administratively how to properly dispense charity. And you saw this with Nanda Maharaj. When his son was born, what happened? He gave all these cows and gold and put platelets, all this stuff to the Brahmanas. So the Brahmanas know how to properly dispense with charity. So I hope that answered your question. Any other questions? For the next 8 minutes, we can just stare at each other. Another question.
You mentioned about the Brahmanas, which is my thought. Just a thought is the Brahmana doesn't mean just you receive the initiation in the thread. It means that you actually spend great deal of time studying the scriptures and come to a certain level of like responsibility of having that knowledge, right? So with the situation that it is now, a lot of times the temples are so overrun with maintenance. It's just a little hard to get the study time in because there's so much maintenance to be done. So, what's a good way to, like, there was a time when a person would start at the age of 5 and be raised to the age of 25 to study the scriptures. But now it's like sometimes we may not be so inspired or have enough time. So I was wondering if you could speak about how to get more engaged in the study.
Yeah. So, two things. One, your Guru Maharaj, he was talking about studying, and people would say, I don't have time. And he would say, then make time. And I explained this the other day to a Mataji, who was talking about doing offerings and needing to read more. And she said, but she listens to her Guru Maharaj's class. I said, well, a good way to do good time management is to either read that shloka that your Guru Maharaj has already recorded prior to listening in the class and or after. And I said, so if you do that daily, then you're actually reading a little bit. One of the things that I do, I rise earlier and I do reciting. So we have a half hour. Everyone has a half hour that they just burn like $1 bill. I don't need this money. So we have a half hour. So out of 23 and a half hours, you have a half hour that you can do every day and just reading something. Some Bhagavatam, or if you're with a group, because we do a lot of stuff. We have a lot of devices, a lot of things that we watch, and but we can take a half hour out of that and devote it. If it can't do a half hour, then take 15 minutes. Take a small portion of your day and devote it, and you'll find that time will increase, and you'll still be able to do the other things, cooking, cleaning, associating. It can happen. Um, so you just have to be dedicated. And that half hour may, well, I can't do it in my regular schedule, but what if I rise a half hour earlier and I dedicate it to reciting mantras or reading, like that. So if you just do a little bit, if you're traveling on the bus, you have your earpods or earphones, you can listen to something. Siri will read or recite these shlokas. And I used to do a half hour, no, an hour going to work. And I would just simply listen to Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. So, and then the next time I would try to read it again or listen to it again. And then maybe when I got to work. So I had a routine. And then when I got to work, before they cut off the internet for me, I would watch, Bhagavatam class from LA. So I did that on a regular basis. So I just try to figure out a routine that I could add into my schedule. And I found that it would work for me. So just figure out how much time, half hour, 15 minutes, that you can do at the beginning or the end of the day. And it's even nice to chant something nicely before you go to bed at night. That way you can dump all that nonsense that you've been absorbing, from the day. So you can just create a routine. Or you get on, maybe you create a 15-minute or half hour call with some devotees, and then you can just recite prayers or read something and do reflections like that. Is that all right? Hare Krishna. Okay. I see. Yes.
Lord Shiva referred to himself as the false ego of Krishna. So that's very interesting.
Yes.
So, question would be, is it possible to explore that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, we know he's an expansion. He's the false ego, anger. He's manifesting that way. But if we look at his qualities, if you agree to be the toe of the Lord, you agree the hips. So there's administrative positions that are needed. So this false ego that Lord Shiva is manifesting, he's actually conducting how we get our false ego. Okay? So if you look at him, he's a pure devotee. But he's in charge of. That's his department. Like, let's say your father is the manager of a sewage treatment plant. Does that mean he's sewage? No, he's facilitating the sewage that we give. So Lord Shiva, although he may embody these qualities that are false ego, we're seeing how things are being pulled apart or actually induced into. First, the pradhan, and then you have the next thing that comes. You see all these things are being broken up, and then there's identity, false identity. So we have this false identity. So one who lords over that would be Shiva, and you can see on the opposite end, he's always being accused. He's he's dirty. He's got snakes around him. He's got skull and bones. He's in his crematorium. He's all these things. But you notice, even with all those things, he's never disturbed. He's hardly ever disturbed. But you can see those who worship him, they have a false ego problem. So sometimes we worship him and we don't even know. We're not even aware. There's accidental agyata sukriti. There's accidental yama, and there's accidental niyama, by accident. But we call it as an accident. But there has to be facility when people act in a certain way, how they're going to fall in what kind of category. So you can see he's vastly different because he's not a jiva. So he's also different from Lord Brahma, who's also succumbs to false ego. So we see these things. So Shiva's position is very more on the lines of a facilitator. And if he ever appeared to be in any pastime to be under the influence of false ego, it's usually he's under the influence of Yoga Maya. And we've seen that with Mohini Murti, with that pastime. So he's under that. He's bewildered. But he's always pretty aware of what he is, but he's also pretty renounced. He's got literally the dirtiest job of all the demigods, you know. But he's one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, even above Lord Brahma. He's very, very well charged. But again, he's easy to ignite and he's easy to pacify. Is that okay? All right, there you go. Thank you for the softballs. Throwing me a nice pitch. Okay. Karanchana Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Nitai Gauda Pramanande.